3.1 Practice and Research Project 9. Now, under the guidance of my tutor and the feedback from my tutorial, my fourth draft critical essay is to be edited with some notes and so forth that have been made on the audio Google Slides. And this has been undertaken a slow progression, stage by stage. I have had to take out some photographs, some of the slides, because there's too many, and it's gone way over the time span. So I'm going to try to reduce that down to 20 to 30 minutes. So it becomes a little bit more cohesive, a little bit more referencing some more quotes and so forth in connections with the research and the research with dyslexia. So moving on to other aspects of my feedback, it was also discussed, how am I going to communicate my textiles? Now, I feel that it would be important to maybe process some of this for Project 10. For Project 10, I do want to go back to the beginning, a little bit like my methodical cycle, go back to the beginning and pull out and extract and look at my new learning with the theme dyslexia and the practitioners that I've looked into with the research and the textile responses and so forth. So that's going to be where I am with that. In Project 9, I have also investigated one particular area, movement and the body. I took away the white mask and the white gloves because it was felt that that was a distraction, and that became a character, which I totally agree with. So what I've done is I did make a new batch of samples, and I'm quite pleased with the samples because Project 8 really gave me the direction that I am going to take my practice into knit, which has also re-edited locating my practice. So that's going to be another area that's undergoing, and that will then carry forward to 3.2 and 3.3. So there's a lot going on in Project 9. This is why for Project 10, I want to kind of try and pull everything together, not do half as anywhere near of the work, but just reduce it right down and just get across reflection, the communicating of my textiles, which I'm going to look at Padlets and mood boards and put images together. But what I wanted to do for Project 9 was to do a new set of samples because it just felt the right way. And I do feel that my sample making I find relatively easy. I think it's that process of problem solving and how I'm going to put them together and how I'm going to make them. So it is all in connection with my thought process. But what it did enable me to do was actually bring the research and the ongoing samples. It kind of refined them and made connections with colour and materials and tactility. They're all very visual. Some new elements came out, which I will demonstrate shortly. Sound started to appear. There's still lots of investigation and exploration. I kind of quite like the idea of the sensory samples, but I don't know whether I am moving that towards stress relief or therapy. I just kind of think it's interesting just to hand these samples to somebody for them to look at them and find their own investigation. And I mean the investigation of the colour, the investigation of the materials, how they're constructed, and to stimulate and ask why, and possible questions. Well, why have you made this and where did this come from? Which obviously is in connection with my research, but it's how I've responded. The new set of samples I feel have come a long way, but I really put this down to making a decision that knit is my way forward. When I actually started practice and research, it was just titled mixed media. So now it's going to be mixed media with knit. And I feel pretty confident and very positive about this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you briefly some of the samples. I think possibly the samples all slightly connect. I think there are possible elements that have slightly moved away. I did bring in the shape of the circle. I think that could have slightly have got lost, but I didn't question it too much. I've just allowed everything just to flow naturally with the materials. Again, problem solving and how to make and how to put them together. But my main point with these samples was to use the body as a platform. I made more refinement photographs and video with the use of the hands, and I just explored movement and shape just to demonstrate in the photographs, which will be later used as a means of communication. And the video format, I think, is a very strong way of communicating. So I didn't worry about it too much at this stage, because I think it's going to be a set of work that will help me move on to 3.2. And I think because of these samples, I think the further developments will happen quite naturally, because there's a lot of more exploration due for expansion on the materials and more investigation. And I presume that this will open more research for me, especially with movement and the body and possible, contorting the textile samples. So here is one of the samples. This actually was one big square piece with the circular pieces. Unfortunately, I couldn't continue to make this more large scale because I'm finding it very difficult to get hold of the mesh at the moment. So I've cut the sample down and utilised it and combined it with my knit. This actually enables me to use the hand, but also as well what has happened with this textile sampling, the arm has now become an extension. So I can now wear that. I do feel that I've made a real connection using the theme dyslexia and being able to wear these pieces. I feel as though it's almost now turned in possibly armour for the body to protect me. So I quite like those ideas. These are very soft, very pliable and flexible, and you can do absolutely anything with them. So that was quite a successful piece, and I think this is down to deciding on that knit is the way forward for me. My second sample used the colour palette, but it also started to make the connections still with the classroom and craft-based products, because I seem to continually keep returning to the online dyslexia store. So this kind of does reflect some of the earlier pieces, and again in the video and so forth, the hands are starting to become the engine for these pieces, and this actually made me feel as though some of these pieces would turn into dance. The textiles began to dance, so again this is something that I can maybe look into for 3.2. Now, early on in practice and research, I'd use the rubber band, which again was a craft-based material. Now this piece, it just seemed logical to make a connection with knitwear and the rubber bands, and this basically just hooked over the knitting needle and got knitted into the fabric, and this just works so well. I can wear it on my wrist, I can play with it in my hands, I can pull it, I can twist it, I can roll it up, I can throw it. So again, there's a lot of experimentation there. And I possibly would even see this as a garment or a sleeve or an edge. And then the refinement of that piece was then the thought process was to connect the original lollipop sticks with the rubber bands. So again, this still moves, it still plays exploration and investigation, but the one key thing with this piece is the sound. So because I've engaged in elements of this, I've actually in my sketchbook and on my blog below this piece, I've also developed an earlier piece where I isolated the plastic balls into my knit. I've actually made a new smaller piece and inserted rice into the balls, and you can shake and pull. So again, these are going to be quite interesting for under further investigation. And then these are my favourite pieces. Again, just using the primary colour palette, and again you can play with these pieces with the hands. You can contort and twist, or even treat them as if they are a puppet. Or again, as I was working with these through video, I found that these pieces then did feel like an armour. And again, I feel as though I'm really making a connection now with my own personal diagnosis of dyslexia and my creative language by being able to wear the pieces. It's quite therapeutic in the whole process of making them, responding to the research, and then wearing and photographing and performing in the video. So this again, I think, will prepare me for 3.2, which was under discussion with my tutor to start to consider. I will definitely be making a continued and using dyslexia as a research, as a theme, because I think the theme is so broad and there's a lot of scope for it, that the pile of research that didn't go into sketchbooks and on the blog is about that deep, from an array of further education to personal experiences with dyslexia. So it's kind of going to evolve yet again. So I'm going to wanting to dig deeper with this subject matter. I don't feel that I want to kind of become bogged down with a lot of the tools and so forth that are used with dyslexia. Are Sentry, are to help and support dyslexia traits, but I think I just kind of want to take it one step further, because I just feel that my pieces do work well with the body, and I don't want them to become too literal based on that theme, but I do feel that they all do still make that connection with an emotion, because I am a dyslexic artist, but as of yet, I think because of the trait and all these ideas keep shooting and firing up, my processes find it difficult to kind of talk about it, explain it, and then it just pops out as something visual. But I think this is going to be more exploration for me. So far, I'm really pleased with the outcome, and I am pleased for the fact that I did make new samples. I have tried to communicate and talk about how I'm communicating with them, with the videos and so forth, and taking on board to get rid of the character with the white mask and the white gloves and just using the hands and the arm as support. Taking elements of colour, materials, tactility, I think is working quite well. So I think, again, there's still a lot there and there's still a lot to process. So I think I am really going to be looking forward to what 3.2 holds for me.